I'm not going to sit here and bore you with a super long intro. If you clicked on this video, chances are you know what a draft grades video is. And if you don't, I'll run it down for you real quick. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, we're going team by team, talking about the draft. I'm going to assign a letter grade to every single pick and then give an overall grade for the team in question. Going to be talking about all 32 teams over the summer. That's my big twist that I put on it. Not exactly reinventing the wheel, but not a lot of people give each team their own video to shine. Usually it's division by division, conference by conference, and those are totally legitimate ways of going about things and probably take a lot less work and save you a lot of time, but hey, I like to do things a little bit differently. Keep in mind, though, because of that time crunch, this intro is pre-recorded. I'm recording this all the way back in May. Who knows how long these videos will take to come out, so just keep that in mind. You know what team you're watching. You don't need me to tell you in the intro. You clicked on the video, you can read the title, you can see the thumbnail. Two quick things to keep in mind. Number one, I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I am very much an amateur. So if I disagree with something your favorite team did, I'm not saying I know better than your favorite general manager, your favorite scout, if you're a freak and have one of those. I'm just saying I didn't agree with the pick. I didn't agree with the process. That's my opinion. Feel free to disagree and let me know in the comments below why you disagree with me or agree with the team, whichever it may be. Regardless, the point is, I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody here. I just have opinions and I like to share them. Also, I have changed my grading scale up from last year, and that is to say that I actually have a grading scale now, as you can see on the screen. This will keep things more uniform, allow me to stay more consistent, and also provide some transparency between me and you as the viewer. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into whatever team we're talking about today. Man, I always love getting to sit down and talk about the Cardinals because there are a lot of guys on this team who I would consider myself a fan of. You know, guys like James Conner, who's one of my favorite running backs in the league. Kyler Murray, super fun quarterback, one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the league. I love their receiver core. Greg Dortch is one of my guys. Michael Wilson was one of my favorite receivers in the draft a couple years ago. Marvin Harrison Jr. is electric. Trey McBride's great. Dante Stills went to West Virginia, played for my Mountaineers. Buda Baker's awesome. There's so many guys on this team that like I said, I would consider myself a fan of. And when you combine that with what they did this offseason, especially on the defensive line through free agency, adding guys like Josh Sweat and Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell, completely revitalizing that defensive line, making it one of the most improved units in the sport. And then you remember that's going to get to work with Jonathan Gannon, who, is coming over from Philly and has a ton of experience with dominant defensive lines. It's really, really exciting to think about what this team can do this year. And this draft class really only adds to it. I am a big fan of what they did across the board. Sure, you can see there's one pick I wasn't as high on, and we'll get to that. But as a whole, I was a big fan of what they did. And that starts with their first round pick, Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. And I'm going to be totally honest, this is one where I really went back and forth with the grade before I ended up making the final graphic and coming to my conclusion for this video. Not because of really anything to do with my thoughts on Nolan as a Cardinal. I think the fit is perfect. I think he makes a ton of sense for this football team. The problem is I'm trying my best to stay consistent, which is why I came up with my new grading scale, and I've, worked out formulas and things to make things make sense. And because of that, Nolan has been in kind of a gray area where normally, or at least the last couple years when I was grading more off vibes, I guess you could say, that's not really true, but the consistency was not fantastic from pick to pick. When I was doing that, I had A-, B-, C- grades, and Nolan, given the way I have graded this year, would fit perfectly in A-, just because of the value, right? I love Walter Nolan. I think there is a world where he is going to be a superstar, and we'll talk about that in a second. But based on my board, which matters for these videos, my opinion, this pick was early. I had a second round grade on Walter Nolan. He was, the 41st player on my board. You're taking him here at 16. Normally, that would get a team dinged for the grade. However, because I am stuck in this gray area where I don't necessarily think this is a B+ pick, I definitely think it's better than that. And while, yeah, the value wasn't great, and I did have a couple guys on the board that I liked more than Nolan, namely Derek Harmon, who went a couple picks later, and I actually had a full-blown first-round grade on. I definitely see the vision for Arizona, because Derek Harmon, while I think he's great, he doesn't have the upside Nolan has. Alfred Collins, another player that I had over Nolan, same deal, just doesn't have the upside that Nolan has. And that definitely matters. So landing with Arizona, with a head coach who has had experience as a defensive coordinator in Philly, has been around the development of really good defensive linemen, the pick makes a ton of sense. You look at Nolan as a player stepping into the league day one, he is going to be a really nice run defender because he is good at two-gapping, he can stack and shed, he's really good at shooting into the backfield and shooting gaps. The only thing there is the pad level does need to improve, and that's something that I think can be worked on pretty quickly. It's just a matter of how he's firing off the ball, something that they can absolutely coach up as soon as week one. Work with him on that over the offseason, and that won't be as big of a problem. If he can do that, then day one, he's going to be a great contributor on early downs. And then as a pass rusher, it's not like I don't think he can do anything right now. He definitely has some juice. He has a good bull rush. His first step's great. He's right now in a situation where he's going to win a lot with traits. And if an offensive lineman doesn't get their hands on him before he gets his hands on them, problems will be had on the offensive side of the ball, right? But in his current state, Nolan does need to develop a little bit in terms of hand fighting. Notably, his counters just don't exist, and that is going to create problems if the lineman across from him is quicker off the snap, does get a hand on him first. So with him, you have a potential star in the making, like I said. And in today's NFL, where these pass rushing defensive tackles are such an important part of defenses, I mean, you look over at Kansas City, the sustained success they've had. Chris Jones is a stud in that regard. Jalen Carter in Philly. Hell, in this division, I know he's not around anymore, but Aaron Donald, for however many years, arguably the greatest defensive player of all time, he absolutely wreaked havoc on the interior in the passing game, and that, created a lot of problems for opposing offenses. So Arizona kind of saying, look, we get that there might be guys that are a little more polished right now. We have depth on this defensive line. He doesn't have to start right away. We have a guy in the coaching room that we believe can help Nolan develop. And even then, he's going to be able to contribute day one. I can't say anything negative about that pick. I think that's an awesome pick. I love Nolan. It's just, I wanted to make that clear with the whole grading thing because I've been putting a lot of effort into trying to stay consistent. It's just, there's always going to be that one exception to the rule, right? And Nolan is definitely that. As we get into another player I am a super, super big fan of, in Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan, who, in my opinion, if he was not coming off a major injury, would have been cornerback number one. Like, as a true corner, he would have been the top corner on my board. Now, Travis Hunter still would have been a better prospect because he can play both ways, but I think in terms of technique and the fundamentals, Will Johnson was the best corner in this class. He's somebody to me that if he is healthy, if he can actually stay on the field and play football, can be one of these true number one lockdown corners that quarterbacks just don't throw at the next level because he's got the frame. We're talking about someone who is 6'2", 194 pounds. He's super smart. He reads the field pre and post snap like a quarterback. He plays physical throughout routes and at the line of scrimmage. He's a really nice press corner. He has great ball skills with physicality and competitiveness at the catch point. His zone IQ is great. He triggers downhill very, very well when he's, sitting and watching what's developing in front of him. He showed promise in the few times that he was asked to play true man-to-man coverage. They just didn't run that a whole lot at Michigan, but he looked like he knew what he was doing and was capable of keeping with anybody in the few times he was. He was a true lockdown corner, like I said, who just took guys out of games. He was very good in press coverage, and he's physical against the run. Like, he's got a little bit of everything. However, on the flip side, the health is an issue. Since 2022, he's battled through several injuries, including a turf toe injury that claimed most of the 2024 season. If I'm not mistaken, the big concern around him at the draft was a knee injury, which is very concerning, but we'll see what happens. I will say also, and I don't know if this is really a true critique, it's more of just an observation, he's not like a freak athlete at corner. Doesn't need to be, given the way he plays, like what he lacks in athleticism. If you want to even say lacks, like he's not slow, he's not unathletic, he's just not Travis Hunter, right? He's not one of these true freaks. He's a lot more like another Johnson in the league, Jalen Johnson, who, is not the craziest athlete in the world, but he's super smart and physical, and that allows him to keep with guys in man coverage. But even then, Jalen Johnson, too, is a little bit more of a zone corner, as Will Johnson is as well. He does have moments where he's going to get a little too aggressive against double moves, and those can look really bad, but, when you're in college like that, I don't think it's the end of the world to get aggressive, right? Especially playing for a big program like Michigan, you're trying to go for the big play, you're trying to make things happen. I can't get too mad at that. And then also, I've seen people bring up, and it's definitely apparent on tape, that in 2024, there were quite a few business decisions made in terms of run defense and going at ball carriers. But I think a lot of that has to do more with the injury and not wanting to further hurt himself. I can't get mad at that. When he is healthy, he is a freak coming downhill and hitting guys with the ball in their hands. So not too worried about that one long term. It's just, like I said, if Will Johnson is healthy at the NFL level, this is going to be the steal of the draft. Not one of the steals of the draft, the steal of the draft. Just to double check here, this was the 8th best player on my board and would have easily been a top 5 blue chip caliber player had he not been coming off a major injury. That's the only thing that held him back, was that injury. Like, he really has all the makings of a superstar and someone who is just going to take the other team's best receiver away for 60 minutes. I love Will Johnson. I'm so jealous of the Cardinals landing him in the second round. Although I can't complain, my Bears also got a major steal in the second round with Luther Burden, but regardless, Will Johnson was a better player. And man, I hope he's healthy, because I want to see him tear the league up. I really do. And then in the third round, they took another player that I was a fan of. This was someone I actually had listed as one of my guys, and Jordan Birch out of Oregon, the edge rusher, interior defensive lineman, whatever you want to call him. He's one of these tweener types at 6'4", 279 pounds. I'm a big fan. I love Jordan Birch. And one of the reasons why I like him so much is he reminds me a lot of Keon White. And if you have been around this channel at all, you know I have a bit of a troubled history with Keon White. Because when he was drafted, I didn't love the pick. I was not a Keon White fan when he was coming out of Georgia Tech. I just did not see the vision with these tweener types. And then I saw the light by watching him play for the Patriots and seeing what they were able to do with him, switching him inside and outside on, early downs versus third down as a pass rusher, the juice he brought to the interior while also being a really stout run defender. Like, he just completely flipped my perspective on him very quickly. And because of that, Jordan Birch, who's a very similar player, is someone that I'm a big fan of. So taking a look here at some of my notes on him, he's got really good athletic tools for someone his size, really good play strength. He has a good frame that would allow him to drop weight and get quicker if you want to keep him as just like a true defensive end edge rusher. Or he could add a little bit of weight, get him closer to 300 if you want to kick him inside. Or obviously he can stay as is and keep that kind of tweener role. I would hope that's what they're planning on doing with him. But, if they do want to make him play one or the other, he absolutely has the frame where he's not going to sacrifice too much if he has to add or drop a little bit of weight. He's a very high motor player, never takes a play off. He's a really good run defender with great run diagnostics, as well as the ability to stack and shed and set the edge. As a backside run defender, he excels. He's really good at making plays from the backside or just keeping contained, making sure the back can't get out his way by setting down his anchor and holding his ground. He converts his speed into power for a really nasty bull rush. His hands are active and violent. He has better bend than you would expect for someone that is just under 280 pounds. He's able to dip around the edge and threaten the corner very short tackler who wraps up and rarely allows tackles to be broken. He's really good at getting his hands into passing lanes and swatting passes as well. And then some of my personal favorite plays from Birch came against screens, where he's really good at reading the quarterback, reading out the ball carrier, and either swatting the ball before it gets to the receiver, whether it be a wide receiver, halfback, whoever, or, he's really good at finding them, bringing them down, stopping them for a loss, making big plays in the backfield. It's just really hard to run screens against this guy. But then on the other side of things, he suffered a knee injury in the back half of 2024 that is definitely notable. His pass rush plan is something that's going to need a little bit of development, but again, like we talked about with Walter Nolan, I am not worried about the Cardinals with Jonathan Gannon and his staff having to develop guys. I'm pretty confident there. And then as a hand fighter, I think he could benefit from a little bit more finesse to his game, and then also his counters are not quite where they need to be. Definitely would like to see him, develop a few more counters as a pass rusher. But the biggest problem I have with Birch is one that I think is very coachable, and that is the fact that he plays with his food a little bit too much, is the best way I would put it. There's a lot of instances where he will just stay engaged with a blocker when he has a clear opportunity to shed and make a play in the backfield. It's almost like he's just fully committed to holding his ground, which is very admirable, but at a certain point, man, you can make the play, right? I get that you want to make sure your linebackers and corners and safeties and maybe even the interior guys next to you are getting into the backfield and making plays. But for God's sake, sometimes you can get in there and get your hands dirty, right? Not saying he doesn't like to. It just feels like he's a little bit more concerned with holding his own. And hell, maybe that's like a coaching thing. Maybe it was just that's what Oregon told him to do because you have guys like Derek Harmon on that defensive line who are big-time playmakers. But either way, I think that is something that is very, very coachable. So another pick I'm a big fan of there, gave that one an A. And through day one and day two, I loved what the Cardinals did. And obviously that's the goal, right? Those first, second, third round picks are the ones you want to hit on. Those are the ones that you have the highest chance of hitting on. They're the most important picks. So the Cardinals knock those out of the park. That's something to hang your hat on at the end of the day, right? Then you get into day three, and it's more of a crapshoot, right? Day three, the picks are a lot more volatile. There's a higher chance for error. There's more room for error. That's where teams like to get a little risky, a little experimental, maybe try some dart throws. Arizona, however, opted to go a much safer route. And I want to point out right away, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? That is fine process. If you're looking at this picks and you're saying we want to maximize these guys, we want to make sure that we are getting guys that we feel can contribute in some way, that's fine. Especially in the 6th, 7th round, Connor and Crawford, we'll talk about them. Those are guys that have the ability to make the roster, and that's the most you can ask out of those picks. Denzel Burke in the 5th round, who again we'll talk about, is somebody that I definitely feel can be a solid backup corner, maybe even sneak his way into the starting lineup at some point. Those 3 picks are really nice, and I will sing my praises for them here in a minute. But before we do that, we got to talk about their 4th round pick, Cody Simon, the linebacker from The Ohio State University, who I'm just not a huge fan of. And it's not because I think Cody Simon is a bad linebacker. I just think he's fine. That's the best way I would describe Cody Barton's game. It's fine. This is a linebacker who isn't particularly athletic, isn't great in coverage, isn't great downhill, but his game is pretty inoffensive, right? He doesn't miss tackles. He's not somebody that is going to be a net negative on the field often. There will be some points where maybe he'll get beaten man-to-man coverage because he isn't super athletic and can't keep up sideline to sideline or something, but he's not somebody that's going to necessarily hurt your team. I also just don't see him as somebody that really adds much, or really elevates anything, because he is, again, fine. And when there's linebackers on the board, at least in my opinion, who could have added a lot to your linebacker room, a guy like Sean Dolak, who I know ended up going undrafted because of size, but he's not much smaller than Cody Simon. Simon is 6'2", 229 pounds. Dolak is 6'1", 225 pounds. You can't tell me 1 inch and 4 pounds makes Simon a better linebacker when Dolak is more athletic and more refined, at the position. He's better in coverage. He's better downhill. He's a lot more instinctive, whereas Simon's a lot more reactive. He's great in coverage, whereas Simon can drop into a shallow zone and hold his own. Dolak can make plays across the field, has good sideline to sideline ability. Another guy in that same vein, Chris Paul Jr., same frame as Dolak, 3 pounds lighter at 6'1", 222. Teammate of Walter Nolan, very similar player. Either one of those guys would have been a big win here in the 4th round. Both end up going to your division rival Los Angeles Rams. Other names I'd bring up, Barrett Carter, who, is a little bit shorter at 6 foot, but 231 pounds. He's got, the bulk you want. He's more athletic. He has higher upside. Smail Mondon, sure, a little bit lighter by 5 pounds, but he's the same height and is more athletic. Teddy Buchanan, pretty much the same deal. And there were a couple linebackers on the board who, even if they weren't as refined as Simon, had upside that greatly exceeded him. And I just don't think taking a linebacker whose ceiling is probably somewhere around mediocre is worth passing up on a couple developmental guys, especially because you look at the Cardinals, like, they took Nolan. They're willing to take developmental guys. It's not like this draft was all about, we want guys who are coming in day one and are ready to start and are super refined. Guys like Carter or Mondon or Teddy Buchanan, they might not be perfect day one, but they can contribute. So I don't know. I really feel like they missed a couple opportunities there. They're also just offensive linemen, and some people might even argue wide receiver. I'm not going to be as quick to jump to that one. But just guys on the other side of the ball who could have contributed as well. Whereas I just feel like this Cody Simon pick, it's fine. A C is like the baseline. If it's better than a C, you're doing good. If it's lower than a C, you're probably in a bad spot. So it's just kind of a whatever pick. And so, I thought there were better players on the board at this position and at other positions that would have been more beneficial for Arizona, but I can't get too mad. It's a 4th round pick, Moving then into the 5th round, they ended up taking Simon's teammate, Denzel Burke, the corner out of Ohio State. And I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. I thought the value was good. Had a late 4th to an early 5th round grade on him. You get him here at the end of the 5th round, so definitely did a good job there. Play-wise, he's got good height and length. He's a solid athlete with notable tools across the board. He can flip his hips to mirror and man coverage. He's a willing press player who can jam guys at the line of scrimmage. He stays physical with active hands throughout routes. He has good zone IQ and is good at, kind of knowing when to pass off routes and things of that nature. Does his best work in man-to-man situations. He's a willing run defender and should be able to contribute at least on special teams from day one. That being said, he's a little skinny. Not the strongest guy in the world, which is going to hurt his ability to play against more physical receivers or play downhill. He often plays the man as opposed to playing the ball in coverage, which did get him in trouble a little bit in college. Needs to develop his eyes when he's playing in off coverage. And I would say his tape was definitely better the year before last. That's something that matters to me. And your final season at college, if, you didn't play your best ball, then that's something that I like to make note of. And I would say he was worse in 2024 than he was in 2023, probably why he was available here on day 3. I know this is a name that had some value, but one other thing I will point out here is I don't know if corner was necessarily the route I would have went here. There are a lot of talented corners on this football team, so I don't know if Burke was inherently a need or anything like that, but it's the 5th round, so you're going to get the talent where you can get it. And, better safe than sorry, I suppose, with Will Johnson's health being a question, and you can never have too much depth in the secondary. Denzel Burke has the tools and the ability to make this roster, so they liked him, then I can't blame them. Better safe than sorry. Secondary is very, very important. It's a passing league, so can't complain too much with that one. Definitely worthy of an A grade. Moving then into the 6th round, they went back to the offensive side of the ball, took Hayden Connor, interior lineman out of Texas. And Connor is someone who I got to after the draft. Didn't watch him pre-draft. I did remember seeing him, though, when I was watching Mason Graham. He had a really nice game in pass pro against him, but I think Connor can be a fine backup lineman. He's got the frame you want. He's got the play strength you want. He's a good pass protector. He's got a good anchor. He can get out in space a little bit. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, even by offensive line standards, but he can do a little bit. That being said, though, his pad level is rough, and that is definitely going to cause some problems. So that plus, like, non-ideal athleticism is why I think he's more of a backup than a starter. But in the 6th round, you're looking for guys that can make the team, and I think Connor can absolutely make it as a backup guard. So no complaints there. And then finally, in the 7th round, Keaton Crawford, the safety out of Nevada. Just a traits-based dart throw. Really fast, really quick. Looks good at the combine, hits hard. Has the ability to be like a safety or a nickel with the athleticism he brings. He also plays really hard at the catch point. That being said, though, he didn't really see the field until he left Texas and went to Nevada. So it took leaving a big-time program, going to a smaller program to really make himself known. And he has some really, really bad missed tackles. But at the very least, I think he can be a quality special teamer. And, in the 7th round, you're looking for a guy to make the roster. So I definitely cannot complain there. But as a whole, like I said, I really, really like this draft class. The only pick I'm not a fan of is Cody Simon, but otherwise Nolan is probably going to be a freak. Will Johnson has top 5, top 10 corner potential. Jordan Birch fits this defense very well and is very exciting. Denzel Burke has the tools to be a starting corner, and then Connor and Crawford have the ability to make this roster. So overall, gonna give this one an A-. I'm really, really excited for some of these pieces in Arizona. I think the sky is the limit, especially with Nolan and Johnson. But you guys will have to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Am I too high, too low on anybody? Do you think Simon is a little bit more than I was making him out to be? That's one of those things where I'd love to be wrong. I don't have anything against Cody Simon. And at the end of the day, sometimes having someone who isn't necessarily a net negative is good enough at linebackers. So, could be eating my words with that one when he's a decent starter. But either way, you guys will have to let me know down in the comments below. And also just let me know how you're feeling about the Cardinals offseason. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm a big fan of what they've been doing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do throughout the season. Hopefully, they play well so I can justify a film breakdown or two. I would love to talk about James Conner on this channel. I love James Conner. I would love an excuse to be like, hey, this guy's really good, and you guys need to remember that, because I feel like a lot of people forget. But other than that, make sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed the video, as it does help out the channel a ton. Shows your support, shows your care. I really do appreciate it. And also make sure to subscribe for more NFL content coming your way throughout the remainder of the offseason. We're finally almost to OTAs, and I am not even halfway done this series, which is a little bit scary, but we're getting there. But either way, while I am struggling to get these out because of life and my computer hitting me and whatnot, you won't want to miss when they do come out. And you also won't want to miss during the season when I'm breaking down game film and talking about what's going on around the league. That's always a ton of fun. Like I said, who knows, maybe I'm talking about James Conner or some other Cardinal throughout the season. But above all else, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it, because you're all wonderful people, and you truly do deserve it.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that